The Secret Lives of Sergeant John Wilson. John Wilson, better known as Jack, was from a town in Scotland where he worked as a draper. Through his work, he met Mary Hutchinson, better known as Polly. She was a well-liked girl. She had beautiful brown eyes. She was bright, cheerful, and brave. Jack was completely infatuated with Polly. They married 4 years after they first met. When it came time to ask Polly's father for permission, Jack claimed he would blow his brains out if he couldn't marry her. The two wed, and a year after, they gave birth to their first son, George. Jack was completely enthralled by his wee wifey and son. Years after they were married, there was a scandal surrounding Jack and his brother. Jack left for Canada, trying to escape the scandal and public humiliation that he faced. He told Polly he would only be gone for a year. Polly was 6 months pregnant with their second child at the time. Jack left for Saskatchewan thinking it would be a place of prosperity and riches. He wrote letters to Polly and spent part of his earnings to her as well. He kept in contact and always made sure to let her know how much he loved and missed her. Jack tried to enlist in the armed forces during World War I in an attempt to get back over to Scotland, but he was rejected due to the health of his lungs. But after seeing a poster, he applied to be an officer for the Royal Northwest Mounted Police, also known as the RNWMP, and his application was accepted. After a couple years of serving with the Royal Northwest Mounted Police, Jack was transferred to Blaine Lake, where he there met the Patterson family. The father, John Patterson, invited Jack over for a meal one evening. There he met Jessie Patterson. She was 16 years old at the time. Jack and the Pattersons got to know each other. The Pattersons liked him, and he liked them, especially Jessie. He was very captivated by her, so much so that when rumors started circulating around Blaine Lake that Jack was married, he lied, claiming that his wife was dead when the Pattersons inquired about his marital status. It was this lie that first set the wheels of his grand deceit in motion. While serving in Blaine Lake, Jack contracted tuberculosis. The Pattersons took Jack in, and Jessie acted as nurse for him, helping to restore his health. It was during this time that the two grew close. Jack was so captivated by Jessie that he asked her to marry him. He confessed to her that his wife was actually still alive, but that their divorce was in the process of being finalized. Jack claimed the grounds for divorce was based on his wife's bad morals, and that he had done his best to serve her and love her, but that nothing he did would change her, and that he was suffering in their marriage. He wrote false letters to Jessie, addressed from his sister and minister back in Scotland. These letters were intended to back up his claims about his wife and about his character. Polly had not heard or received a letter from Jack for months, and began to grow concerned that something had happened to her husband. Polly decided to travel to Canada to search for her husband, but her family advised against it. But being the faithful wife that she was, she traversed across the sea from Scotland to Canada, leaving her 2 young children in her family's care. Once her ship landed in Halifax, she located Jack with the assistance of the RNWMP. Jack was completely surprised and annoyed that Polly had come to Canada. Jack told her to take the train to Saskatoon and that he would meet her at the station. They ended up moving to Regina, where they lived for 5.5 months. During this time, Polly became pregnant with their 3rd child. While Jack and Polly were living in Regina, he and Jessie were sending love letters back and forth. Jessie had no idea that Jack's wife, Polly, was in Canada or that Jack was living with her. He told Jessie that he had been transferred to Regina. The two wrote back and forth, Jack declaring his love for his wee girl, and Jessie expressing how excited she was to become Mrs. Wilson. One day, Polly found one of the love letters from Jessie in one of Jack's coat pockets. She confronted Jack about the letter, in which Jessie wrote of their future wedding. Jack claimed he didn't know where Jessie had gotten the idea that they were getting married, and unconvincingly denied his love for her. This burdened Polly more than the weight of her unborn child, and she was heartbroken. Jack told Polly that they would drive up to Blaine Lake together to let Jessie know that Jack was a married man and that he couldn't be with her. Jack packed a gun and a shovel along in the car for the drive there. He claimed it was in case they found a goose to shoot for supper. They did end up coming across a goose. Jack came out of the vehicle, shot the goose, then turned around and shot Polly in the face, killing both her and their unborn child. Jack panicked, having not thought about what he would do after he shot Polly. He kept Polly's body in the vehicle and drove until he found a culvert near Waltheim, in which he dug a shallow grave and hastily buried her there. He made a couple trips back to the culvert that evening and ended up crashing his car into the ditch right beside the culvert. Unable to get the car out, he lit the car on fire to hide the blood and evidence. 2 days after Jack murdered Polly, Jack and Jessie were wed. They would have been married sooner, but they had trouble finding an ordained minister. The newlyweds moved into a room that Jack rented in Saskatoon, and they were very much in love. Though Jack was anxious that what he had done would catch up to him, he began to relax and settle into married life for the second time. Months after Polly's murder, her family back in Scotland was growing worried and concerned for her well-being as letters from her arrived less frequently before ceasing altogether. It was very out of character for Polly, especially since she left her 2 children at home. Polly's sister, Elizabeth, wrote a letter to Mr. Routledge of the RCMP inquiring for information about her sister. She included a photograph of Polly with her letter. RCMP inquired into Polly's whereabouts, and suspicions arose when an officer spotted Jack walking with Jessie, a woman who did not match the photo of Polly. They could not find any death certificate for Polly or anything about Polly at all. Jack was arrested, dismissed from the RCMP for reasons unrelated to Polly, and then questioned. While in jail, Jack wrote a statement claiming that Polly was killed in a car accident somewhere between Saskatoon and Blaine Lake, but that he couldn't remember exactly what happened or where her body ended up. The police suspected that Jack killed Polly, but had no proof. In the official report, it stated that investigators purposefully excluded the culvert near Waltheim as a possibility for where Polly's body might be, as it was just too close to where Jack had crashed his car. During the time Jack was being held in prison, Jessie discovered that she and Jack had conceived. Whether because of Jessie's pregnancy or not, Jack made a second statement claiming that he accidentally shot Polly while they were out hunting. He stated that his foot slipped as he was getting into the vehicle and accidentally pulled the trigger, shooting Polly in the face. He also claimed that he didn't report anything because he feared that no one would believe him, so he told police where to locate the grave. Polly's body was recovered and the autopsy confirmed she died while 6 months pregnant. Jack was then put on trial for Polly's death, where he pleaded not guilty to murder charges. He faked insanity in an attempt to be acquitted of the charge, and while the doctor decided Jack was in no state to be put on stand for questioning, there was enough testimonies given to clarify the events surrounding Polly's death for the jury to find Jack guilty and sentence him to death by hanging. While on death row, Jack admitted to intentionally pulling the trigger, though he claimed that he didn't really know what he was doing. John Wilson was hung on April 23rd of 1920, the same day that Jessie gave birth to their child.